A business owner is trying to get approval from the city of Jackson to open a skating rink on Raymond Road. The owner says she's run into hurdles from the city, even though she believes she has followed every order. Kennedy Drake is in the studio now with us to discuss the plans moving forward. And Kennedy, can you tell us what troubles is that business facing right now?
Yes, Maggie. Well, the owner of Nostalgic Skate Center says that she's disappointed in the city of Jackson for postponing her use permit to open the business after it was already approved by the city's planning board. Ronnie Brent, the owner of Nostalgic Skate Center, says her request for a use permit was approved unanimously by the planning board. But at a Jackson City Council meeting, following the approval of the project, Council President Vernon Hartley tabled the owner's request. Hartley says Ward 5, where the business is located, does not have representation on the planning board. The councilman tells us community members didn't want the previous business that was owned by Brent's father. Hartley says back then, violence was at an all-time high at the location.
We approved the previous place. After that, there was probably about 100 calls of service from JPD at the location. All kind of nonsense. I even had someone tell me that a lady had been shot in the head over there. A judicial official. Okay. And so, same building, same family.
The owner says the decision was unfair and she did get positive feedback from the community. Brent tells us the councilman should not let the previous crime stop the community from having a place of entertainment.
And not let that stop us from providing entertainment, quality entertainment to families, children. And that's very, very disheartening for me to see that we don't have their trust from our councilman. This process started prior to April. It's been long enough. They've had plenty of time to get representation on the planning board for Ward 5.
Hartley said he's also concerned about the campaign process Brent went through. He says Brent swayed public opinion without letting others hear the full story. The council member then said the entire venue was completed and built out before any permits were granted, something that he says is illegal.
You know, we can't have everybody out there just lobbying for their facility against and doing everything outside of city ordinance. And that's my concern now.
The owner told 3 on Your Side it was disheartening to see multiple businesses get their locations approved, while she wasn't able to speak during the most recent city council meeting. Brent tells us Hartley needs more trust in the community to have a place of enjoyment. In our conversation with Brent, she says the permit was originally granted because every vote was earned. It's unclear when the request for the permit will be brought up again. We'll make sure to keep you updated as the progress continues.
All right, Kennedy, thank you so much.